I didn't know what Zoom was in March, but I have to say that in adjusting to COVID, we had an incredibly robust primary and for the Democrats in Douglas County, and it yielded some great candidates. Some of them are running unopposed. Some of them still have elections to win, but we're proud of all of you. I'm also really pleased to say that although it wasn't always easy, being able to do this whole series of Zoom events and conversations with candidates has been tremendously valuable for our voters. It'll be on YouTube, it'll be on our website. Candidates can take this information and share it, so boost it where you can, and we'll get on with the show tonight. We have one more Zoom event on Saturday, 4 p.m., and that will be a conversation with Tom Holland, who is running for state senator re-election, but in a tight race that is contested with a candidate who was a Republican state legislator who was encouraged to run for the Senate in order to target Tom. So it's an exciting race. We want to show our support to him. We will also, at that point, we also are just really focused on just getting out the vote. So calling and texting is what we need to do. We are planning an election night event on Zoom. It won't last all night, but it will be a time to just touch base with each other and hopefully have some things to celebrate. But so watch for that information. I'll make a brief announcement so that 20 people don't call me tomorrow, but we are out of Biden and Harris signs, and we won't be getting more in. We will be getting bumper stickers, Biden-Harris bumper stickers. We do still have Michelle de la Isla and Barbara Boyer yard signs and campaign materials for them and for some of our other candidates. So please feel free to avail yourself of those. At this point, I would like to turn it over to our moderator, Barry Shalinsky, who I've just gotten to know this year, and I am pleased that he is a precinct committee person, and always asks really good questions, and so I thought he might be a really good moderator. Barry was a longtime activist in Lawrence and then moved away for employment and work and life and came back again in 2019 and has just rejoined with vigor and energy and a progressive viewpoint. And so he is going to be moderating the discussion, and I will let him introduce our candidates. As I mentioned, we do record, so we're recording this. And what we hope is that this will be just an intimate and comfortable conversation among the three of us, among the three of them. If you have questions that you want to pose through chat, I'll try and keep note of those and bring them in. But it might be that we've got a nice enough group that this is truly going to be a conversation, which would be lovely. So with that, I will turn it over to Barry.
All right. Thank you a lot, Pat. I really appreciate the opportunity to moderate this forum. I am Barry Shalinsky. I'm the precinct committee man for precinct number 39, which is East Lawrence. And we have a piece of downtown as well in the precinct. This particular precinct, or actually our two precincts in East Lawrence, number 39 and 40, are among the most Democratic in Douglas County, which means among the most Democratic in the state of Kansas. If we do any less than 90% for one of our candidates, we consider it a failure. So we are hoping to turn out some really, really big margins here. I went to the candidate websites and printed out some introductions that I think I'm going to not use because it's a lot of reading, and anyone who really wishes to can go to the websites and do so for themselves. So I will just proceed with a little bit briefer introduction of our candidates. First, Shannon Reid is running in the 2nd Commissioner District, which is Eastern Lawrence and Eastern Douglas County, including Baldwin and Eudora. Shannon has lived most of her life in the 2nd District. She went to school at New York School, which is our neighborhood school here, as well as Broken Arrow, Billy Mills, Lawrence High, and is currently a resident of the Prairie Park neighborhood. She has been very, very active in the nonprofit world for most of her professional career, and I'm sure that she can talk a little bit more about her work. Shannon Portillo is running in the 3rd Commission District, which is Western Douglas County, including Western Lawrence, Lecompton, and some of the other rural areas in the west part of our county. Shannon moved to Douglas County in her late teens to attend the University of Kansas, got degrees at KU, and is now working there professionally at the Edwards campus. I will say on a personal note that it was very interesting to be driving in my car a couple weeks ago and listening to NPR and hear them say, and to comment further on this issue, we are speaking with Shannon Portillo. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Here's a person with the same name as our county commission candidate. And come to find out, not just the same name, but actually the same person. So Shannon is a well-respected expert, not just in our community, but nationally. So it was very exciting to hear that. She also has a lot of experience, not only in the academic world, but the nonprofit world. So with that, I'm going to ask both of you my first question, which is, what else would you like for us to know about you? And what do you hope to achieve as a county commissioner? And we can start with Shannon Reid for this one.
So much for that introduction, Barry. I appreciate it. And thank you all for joining us this evening. So what else would I like for you to know about me? I think primarily that I am rooted in the advocacy work that I do. Currently, I serve as the court advocacy director for the Willow Domestic Violence Center, and have been in that position for close to 8 years. And that work, among others, just nonprofit work, like Barry mentioned, that I've done before, has really rooted me in just advocating for folks who are vulnerable for a variety of reasons, and who experience barriers in navigating local systems. And so I'm really rooted in that work and really wanting to be connected to folks, and doing the work of empowering people to get connected to resources and It's kind of, when I look back on my life, even as a student growing up here and moving around a lot in different neighborhoods, it's kind of a role that I've always played in my communities and my friend circles, to be somebody who thinks critically about the status quo of any given situation, and kind of what I see could be changed or could help more people in some way or another, and then advocate for that issue. And so this choice to run for public office and hopefully become your county commissioner is my desire to bring those advocacy skills and also the voices of other people who maybe historically have not been invited into some of these discussions, not been aware of or participatory for a variety of reasons, and really uplift those voices. And I also hope to be a part of a county commission that does a lot of listening to and talking with the public and our voters, and figuring out how we bring their voices to the various advisory boards and councils, and the places in our community that really do the work of progressing opportunity and growth and access for our residents across the entire community. So that is a little bit more about me and why I chose to run. And Barry, I think you had a second part to your question that I lost. I apologize.
No, that was it. Just what
Okay.
You would like us to know about you and what you hope to achieve. So you answered it beautifully.
Great. Thank you.
Shannon Portillo, District 3 candidate.
Well, I just want to echo what Shannon Reed said. Thank you all for being here, and thank you so much for organizing this. Thank you, Barry, for hosting it. That marketplace story that I got to be on was definitely a nerd dream come true. So I'm glad that folks were in their car to hear it, because that has been one of my favorite NPR programs my entire life. So it was really fun to get to do that interview. I am really excited to be running for County Commission in District 3. This is definitely a live my values moment. I've spent my entire professional career studying local government. I was really fortunate to go to the University of Kansas. I came to KU because it was 20 minutes away from where I grew up, and my parents told me that I could come to KU because it was so close and I'd be able to be home every Sunday night for Sunday dinner. That apparently wasn't close enough, because my parents ended up moving to Lawrence my freshman year of undergrad, and they have lived less than 10 minutes away from me ever since. So all of us are now Lawrence residents, Douglas County residents. I was really fortunate that KU had and has one of the best programs in the nation when it comes to local government. So my work has always centered on how we think about issues of race, gender, age, socioeconomic status, and sexual orientation when it comes to local government and policy within courts, within policing, and broader and other government institutions, including things like the military and then voting. So I'm excited to bring my professional knowledge to this particular position. I think that this is a moment in Douglas County that's really important. The vote for jail expansion was definitely the thing that propelled me into discussions with Shannon Reid about whether we would run for these offices or not. And even though we have seen that the county commission reversed their stance and they're no longer going to be expanding the jail, there's still quite a bit of work to do when it comes to criminal justice reform. So I also serve as co-chair for Governor Kelly's Commission on Racial Equity and Justice. And in my role there, we're working on recommendations to roll out to the entire state, looking at what we can do from a state level with the executive branch and state administrative offices, what legislative asks we can put in place during the upcoming legislative season, and then what recommendations we can push out to local governments. And so I'm excited to do that work at the state level, bring it home to Douglas County, and see how we can continue to work towards more equitable systems here locally. And as Shannon mentioned, a big part of what excites me about this position is the number of boards and commissions that we get to help appoint folks to. And I think it's an opportunity for us to get more people engaged at the local level and get more people really ready to run for office in the future. So I'm excited to continue to work on that pipeline of future leaders.
I'm really happy that both of you mentioned that. I'm a member of the Lawrence Board of Zoning Appeals, and that's a really good way to serve the community. So I hope that people really take advantage of those opportunities. This may actually play into my next question a little bit. Both of you ran very vigorous and well-organized campaigns in the primary. And you get big kudos and congratulations for that. This year's primary saw a record turnout and a really big increase in young voters and voters from traditionally marginalized communities who have not participated in the process as much historically. So how are you planning on continuing to engage with some of these newer voters post-election?
So first of all, thank you very much, Barry. I think a big part of all of that was that we had the world's greatest campaign manager, Elise Higgins. Shannon Reid and I share a campaign manager, and she has kept us incredibly organized. She does a really fantastic job of helping us think strategically and engaging with volunteers. I think a big piece that I was even kind of surprised about is that when we looked at the numbers in the primaries, I'm a millennial, I'm a proud millennial, and we were outvoted by Gen Z. So even those younger voters are really getting engaged and really getting passionate. And so I've been really excited to see how many folks want to engage with us around the campaign. We've been running phone and text banks every Thursday in September, every Monday and Thursday throughout October. And we have a really great, really supportive group of volunteers working with us. And I think that when it comes to post-election, a big piece of what we're going to need to do is make sure that those people who got excited about the election, they see things like the Zoning Commission, they see things like the Planning Commission, they see where they can get involved and continue to make these decisions. And they see that these are, the process of governing is every day. It's not just when elections come about. And so I'm excited to keep folks engaged through boards and commissions, and also making sure that they kind of speak openly and honestly to us when we are making votes. I want to hear what people think. I want to know that we're truly representing our districts.
Thank you.
I would add to that also, the other exciting part about this election to me was the Write Us In campaign. And so, and Barry, you're one of those precinct committee people, and that's actually something I was not aware of as a position before, having not been directly involved with the local Democratic Party in previous elections. That was an exciting position for me to hear about. And then I thought the Write Us In campaign really did a lot of work to engage people and start doing the work of precinct committee folks before getting, officially elected. And then it was really cool to see during the canvass of ballots that even those records were shattered, that it was the most precinct committee people ever written in before, and the most kind of in office. And so that's some really on the ground neighborhood work that got people organized to vote and engaged in all the ways that they can vote. And our campaigns also relied a lot on like local organizations and community organizers who have been doing some of this work, like Sunrise Movement and Sanctuary Alliance, and some of those groups that were really committed to participating in local elections, knowing that there's a lot of opportunity to engage all levels of government around important issues. So it was a really exciting primary to be a part of, and I thought that the canvas of ballots was pretty exciting to see. I thought it was fun to see how elated Jamie Shue was about reading all of those numbers after counting the provisionals and giving all those finals, and every single number that he read was a record broken. So I think that's a cool story for our community, and there are a lot of efforts towards that.
And Shannon Reed won her race by 3 votes. So I think that we can always say that every single vote matters. And this was a really great election, for a first election for folks, because they saw how much those votes mattered.
I would agree with what both of you have said on this. My first election, betraying my age here, was 1972, which was the George McGovern campaign. I was 18 and we were on fire. And that's where I started and been at it ever since. And yes, a bunch of us ran for precinct committee posts. Before I knew it, I'd gotten myself on the state committee and did a lot to try and reform the state party and the way that they did business. And I know that a lot of the people that got involved in this year's election for the first time have been very interested in reforming the Democratic Party and how it does business and how it addresses different communities that we have not addressed as well as we should. And like some of the leadership then, you know, there was maybe some resistance, but there was also some really, really smart people who recognized the value in what was happening around them. And we are very lucky that Pat is that type of leader who has embraced this new energy, invited people in, you know, found ways of empowering folks and giving them responsibilities. And so that's a parallel. I'm going to ask one more question about the election, and then we can move on. I think we need to acknowledge that we were really blessed in many, many different races across the county to have some really well qualified candidates. And both of you are really well qualified candidates, and you were running against some really well qualified candidates, which made it difficult for the voters. And in many ways, it was good for the voters because we really couldn't make some huge mistakes, perhaps. But anyway, I just wanted to ask you what you might have to say to people that voted for a different candidate in the primary about why they should feel really good about supporting you at this point.
Good question. I appreciate you bringing it up, Barry. My 3-way race, and interestingly having, was it three-way Democratic primaries in the county, I believe, which was unique in and of itself. My 3-way race was interesting. I had a lot of conversations with a lot of people that had different perspectives about it. And ultimately, I'm really grateful that it turned out to be that way. I think that it all of those races helped engage even more voters in the process and really figure out who they were going to choose, and not just pick an only option available. And so, to the folks that voted for other candidates in my race, my hope is that you hear me say I am committed to being an advocate for the voices of my constituents, and that I'm really, I love talking to people. I love conversations. It's part of why I've had the current job I have for so long, because I love connecting to folks and hearing what it is that that's important to them, what issues they see as potential barriers or oversights on a county government level, and make sure that I'm actively listening to the voices of people who have concerns to bring. And also, I'm really committed to collaborative and progressive relationships. I believe that there's always space to have direct and sometimes tough conversations about differences in perspective, differences in priorities, perhaps, and that I am really committed to always having open conversations with people and giving space and validity to those viewpoints, and always being accountable for the votes that I choose, or the positions that I prioritize. And so I just want all those voters who chose a different candidate in the primary to know that I'm open and available for any conversation that they wish to have. And I also hope to build relationships with both of those other candidates specifically. I mean, clearly I have a lot that I can learn from Commissioner Feldman, and know that she has a rich history in being a part of starting a lot of really important initiatives and being a part of things progressing in this county for the amount of terms that she's spent. And I know that Sarah Taliaferro is an incredible local advocate who knows a lot about housing issues and knows a lot from her experience with the land trust. And so I hope for opportunities to learn from them, and also the folks who supported their elections and helped elect them, and ultimately I believe are committed to having progressive candidates in those county commission seats to help expand the support that Douglas County provides to its residents at large.
Thank you.
I just want to echo a lot of what Shannon has said. I think that having these contested primaries got us to have some really intense and interesting conversations when it comes to policy, the direction of the party, and what it means to engage at the local level. And I think generally those have been really positive things. We saw a lot of engagement because of those contested races, and we saw a lot of really impactful conversations. Similarly, I ran against a really well-qualified opponent in the primary, and I think that I look forward to engaging with Karen, particularly around her work as a volunteer firefighter, as we're getting ready to look at how we think about our fire medical services in the county, and thinking about how we can engage in the unincorporated areas of my district in particular. My race is a little bit different in that the 3rd district seat has been held by Republicans for quite a while, and it's traditionally kind of been a very Republican dominated space. I think that we've seen a really significant shift in the population over the past 4 years, and I hope that that means that this is a commission that will have 3 Democratic voices on it soon. And I think that this is a moment for our party to really say, these are the values that we believe in as a community, and here's how we can move forward as a community at the county level.
Great. And of course, to follow up, there are a lot of Republicans, particularly in your district, and a lot of unaffiliated voters in both districts who were not involved in the primary. And so any other thoughts on that type of broader engagement?
Yeah, so that has been something that our campaign has been actively working to engage Republicans and unaffiliated voters. So we do include them in our phone and text banks. So we want to do that outreach and we want to engage people. I think a big piece of this, particularly at the local level, when we're looking at issues of criminal justice policy, when we're looking at the budget as being one of the most important things that we're going to have influence over, I think this is something where we can work across party lines to make good decisions and make decisions that benefit the entire community. So we have been actively working to engage Republicans and unaffiliated voters, particularly in my district, but across both District 2 and District 3.
Thank you. For everyone listening, I'm going to promise you that we did not rehearse this and really have not met each other before tonight. But your remarks led right into my next question that I was going to ask. It is often said that to really understand public policy priorities, follow the money. So please discuss your personal experience with writing and administering budgets and your priorities for areas where you would like to see the county spend its public money.
I don't know which one of us you want to go first.
It's up to you, doesn't matter.
I tend to get very excited and nerd out about budgets. Shannon and I met with Sarah Polinsky a few weeks ago just to get the big binder, and it was very exciting for me. My very first peer review publication as a young academic, as a PhD student, was actually about budgets, local government budgets, and how local government administrators take into account input from the public and how that varied in more diverse jurisdictions versus less diverse jurisdictions. So I truly believe that budgets are values documents. And I think that we demonstrate our values as a community based on how we allocate our limited funds. And so I'm really excited to get into that binder and learn even more about our budget. But I think from a values perspective, for me, our community has made really clear that we support mental and behavioral health. We passed a quarter-cent sales tax to support that. And I think that our community has made really clear that we care about social services. We also have made clear that we need some reforms when it comes to criminal justice. So it's not just about not expanding the jail. I think it's about making sure that the jail is a safe space. So we may still need to remodel the jail. The jail still needs an HVAC unit. We still need to work on the parking lot. We still need to work on elevators. We also need to make sure that we're creating the kinds of services that we don't see a lot of recidivism and that kind of going back into jail. We need to make sure that reentry for our community members really works. And so I'm excited to work on our budget to think through how do we enact real criminal justice reform? How do we make sure that we're bringing people into the process so they understand what our budget looks like, why it looks that way, and how we can make changes when we need to make changes. The county is also a really interesting level because we as the county commissioners will be setting budgets for other elected officials. So we need to work closely with, I see Adam Raines is on today. We need to work closely with the treasurer's office. We need to work with the county clerk's office. We need to work with the district attorney's office to make sure that their budgets are adequate so that they can accomplish their goals as well. So we need to be really collaborative, really transparent, and really accountable to our constituents. And I'm looking forward to all of the Excel spreadsheets in our future.
Thanks.
So I must admit that I don't quite share the same. I certainly don't share the experience level that Shannon Portillo has with budgets, especially, government level budgets. And don't quite geek out about it as much as she does, though her energy around it helps me get more excited about it. So I will just acknowledge up front that the county budget and government budgets, it's a learning curve for me. And thank goodness for Sarah Plinsky, who has already been really great and welcoming about questions and helping frame kind of what that process looks like and what are the important pieces of it for me to really be paying attention to. And as luckily, the 2021 budget is set, and so there's some time to really kind of study that and understand it more. So my personal experience with budgets is primarily just my personal budgeting, which, the story of that for me is I grew up in abject poverty with serious housing instability. A parent who, my mom has a ninth grade education, struggled with a lot of mental illness. And so those were skills that I certainly did not learn, but taught myself and learned from other people, peers mostly, and some mentors in my first few years of college. And, personal budgeting is something that I work a lot on with clients of mine. And I've done that in a variety of my jobs, just helping folks manage money and figuring out how to make ends meet and extend your resources and prioritize what matters. So I think I have a lot of that perspective of trying to figure out, well, like Shannon said, that what are the highest valued items? What are the highest priorities? And in the county budget, of course, we're working with a lot more money coming from a variety of revenue sources too, right? Which come with their own rules, restrictions, parameters, expectations, so there's a lot more to it that I am excited to learn about. I enjoy learning about systems and understanding the process of how you start from here and get to there. And ultimately, the part that I'm most excited about is just figuring out how to really translate the concerns that I'm aware of, the unmet needs and barriers of so many vulnerable populations in our communities, and really work on enhancing our social service funding even more in human services. And I think that's a significant part of the county's budget. And I think that there's a lot of interest right now and a lot of traction with collaboration between community partners and local social service agencies who are collaborating and figuring out how to come up with some really creative ways to use money to address behavioral and mental health issues in our community and the gaps in services that exist there, and how to provide more housing opportunities and access to sustainable housing. So those are the conversations I'm most excited about. And I hope that Shannon and I will both get elected, and that I will be able to really learn a lot from her experience with budgets. And Sarah Plinsky, like I said, the county administrator and their staff, they do such a thorough job and have been really generous about framing that for us in preparation.
Thanks. So you both touched on this a little bit, but I'd like to maybe delve a little bit deeper. The issue of jail expansion has been widely discussed this year, and I guess widely discussed for several years. And it appears that it is now off the table. So what do you see as the next steps in criminal justice reform?
I can hop in on that. So I'm really excited with the most recent news that is off the table and the conversation has shifted. And as somebody who has been a part of the conversations for the several years that they've been happening, and up up until January of this year and the vote that the county commission had made to move forward with the project. I'm excited to see the fruits of the community's labor truly having been reached. And now I am ready for us to dig into even more nuanced conversations as a whole community between the various elected officials on the county level, along with our criminal justice system partners and other community agencies to address what I think are some big issues in our community. And for me, a big priority is progressing the conversation around a public defender's office. The work that I do as an advocate for survivors who are navigating legal systems in a whole host of ways. A lot of people think that my job is about serving victims of crime only, but what we know is that people are experiencing being criminalized for a whole variety of reasons. And so we work with folks who are experiencing their own criminal cases, who are in the jail. We provide support groups to those folks who are trauma survivors there. And there's a pretty glaring lack of continuity in services and legal defense services that folks get. And I think that a public defender's office could do a lot to provide support staff and oversight to a staff of attorneys who are being appointed to those criminal cases. So that's a discussion that I'm looking forward to progressing. There was a study session a month or two ago with the county commission and Heather Cessna from BIDS on the state level, and I was excited to see that conversation happen. And that it's, excuse me, a topic for the CJCC also, I think, in determining kind of what the data is telling us. So that's one example of an issue that I think we can start to really make some forward momentum on now that we aren't figuring out whether or not the jail will be expanded. And as Shannon mentioned earlier, that we can prioritize like the necessary remodels and necessary updates and improvements that facility needs without increasing the footprint of the jail, and really just focus on addressing the needs of the people who are being held in custody there, as well as the staff.
Thank you.
So I completely agree with Shannon and echo a lot of what she said. It was really wonderful to see the commission hear the community and the advocacy that's been going on in the community for years and put a stop to the jail expansion. I do think that because of how much space the conversation around jail expansion took up, it really meant that we weren't looking at some of the other issues that are going on in our community. And this gives us an opportunity to really consider how we might implement some evidence-based practices. So I think in addition to thinking through a public defender's office, which would provide institutional support and institutional training to defense attorneys in our area and make it more likely that folks have an attorney when they make first appearances. So when those bail and bond decisions are being made, we need to consider bail reform. We need to make sure that our system isn't a wealth-based system. And we need to consider how across the state of Kansas, 53% of people who are in jail have not been convicted of a crime. They haven't had a trial. And we need to really look at who's in our jail. Do they need to be in our jail? And how do we make sure that the folks who are in our jail are there for the shortest amount of time possible and it doesn't disrupt their lives? So we need to consider evidence-based reforms, not just around the jail, but also how do we work with our city partners in thinking about the police department and how folks initially become involved with the criminal legal system. We need to also work with community corrections. And how do we make sure that people who are on supervision or who are in the community serving a sentence have the resources that they need to make sure that they're not recommitting crimes? And we need to consider what are the ways in which we make sure that we are living in crime-free communities. And ways to do that are really simple things like making sure that we have access to affordable housing, making sure that we advocate as much as we can for Medicaid expansion so that folks have access to healthcare, so that we have the kind of community that we want to live in. But the work that the Commission on Racial Equity and Justice is doing, we will put out our report in December. And as I mentioned, that will have a number of recommendations for local governments. And we hope to be able to discuss implementing some of those here in Douglas County.
Great, thank you. I'm going to turn to Pat now and see if there are any questions that have come through in chat.
There have been.
Great.
Yeah. Couple questions that have shown up, and one of them relates to those of us in the county who live not in town, but in the countryside. And how do you see the priorities and goals that you've articulated as being helpful to the needs of those of us in those of us Douglas Countyans who are in rural areas, and do you have a sense of what their priorities might be as well? Some of these are universal, but some of them are distinct. And I've had a few comments that came to me about, well, what about our roads and bridges? I think it would be great if you could address that a little bit. I'm sure you've given it some thought.
Yeah, I think that this is a really important question. And when I am thinking about how do I want to serve as a county commissioner, I think about three main values, and that's accountability, community, and justice. And those values don't shift if I'm thinking about Lawrence within city limits, or if I'm thinking about the townships or unincorporated areas that are part of my district. And so what that really comes down to, and when we think about implementation, that goes back to the budget as our values document. And we need to consider how that budget looks for folks in unincorporated areas, in the rural areas of our community, and in the city of Lawrence. And a big part of what I want to tackle is thinking through the 44 agreements that the county and the city have in place that haven't been reconsidered since we've had a new city administrator and county administrator. One of those is the fire and medical, which is joint between the county and the city. How are we making sure that we have fire and medical services in our unincorporated areas, in the rural areas of our community that are fair? How are we making sure that we have infrastructure that reaches all of the parts of our rural communities that we need? And then how are we also thinking about affordable housing? I have heard from folks who live in my district, who live in the unincorporated areas, who said, I live in a rural community and it means all of these things, some of which are really great and some of which are access to fewer services, but it's because I couldn't afford to live in Lawrence. And I think we need to think about rural by choice and folks who feel pushed into the rural areas of our community because of a lack of affordable housing. And how do we make sure that people have the choice of where they want to live? And when folks are living in the unincorporated areas because they do want to be rural by choice, how are we making sure that we're preserving those communities and making land use decisions that protect the agricultural areas of our community? So I don't think that there are separate issues for people who live in the city and people who live in rural areas of our community. I think it really has to do with how are we bringing all of our values to all of those issues and having those discussions in open and transparent ways.
Fabulous. Good answer. Another question that showed up was a question about the use of star bonds and neighborhood revitalization. Anybody want to touch that?
I will acknowledge that those are things that I do not know a lot about yet. So I have some familiarity from my time working at United Way with, and now I'm gonna blank out on the city helps run the block grant. Well, I think that the city and the county help with that, the community block grants funds, which have helped with some neighborhood revitalization, but I don't know about it on the county administration level yet.
Okay, fair enough. Well, that's, put it on your list.
Yep.
I think that these are, As we're considering economic development throughout the county, we need to think about all of the tools that we have at our disposal. And I think so far, when we look at incentive structures, we have seen a pretty good return on investment, and a lot of the financing incentives that we've used throughout the community, whether it be within Lawrence or throughout the county. But this is one where we really do need to be good partners with the city and with the townships and other cities in the county to make sure that we're making good development choices.
Okay, thank you. That is actually most of our, I think that gets at our questions from the chat. Yeah, I think that is. What I would suggest, Barry, did you have any, were you going to ask each of the candidates for a little final comment and send off for us? Because we're about at the hour. We're almost at 8 p.m. This has given me a lot to think about. And I really appreciate how much thought both of you have put into not just being a candidate, but what it means to be a commissioner and what is facing the county. It's kind of exciting, actually. Barry, how do you want to wrap it up?
Okay, well, I think we definitely need to bring it in for a landing. So what I would like to do is, first of all, thank both of you, not just for being here, but for running for office. You are great candidates. You are going to be, hopefully, great commissioners. And we need that. And it takes a lot to put yourself out there. And I really, really appreciate you doing that. I would just like to thank you again and give you a couple minutes to say anything that you have not had an opportunity to say, and then we can wrap it up and remind everybody to vote.
Yeah. I did have one last question that pops in, and then I will let, and then we should go with our closing. But the question showed up from Wayne Ricks to everyone, so presumably you all can see this. Wayne, your question was, are you able to address changes in the curriculum for education? You're as commissioners, you're in a lot of different school districts that make up Douglas County. Do you have thoughts about education and curriculum?
As an educator, I always have thoughts about education and curriculum, but I think this is one where we have a number of different school districts that go to both of our county commission districts. And so we really need to make sure that we trust the school boards that are elected in those spaces and that we hold them accountable to what we want to see as a community. There are also some state level pieces that come with education. I remember when I was in undergrad looking at some of the education policy and seeing how little civics education is required in K through 12 schools in the state of Kansas, and I was appalled. So I think that this is an opportunity for us to work with our state level partners to try to advocate for more. Though as a county commissioner, I think that our biggest role when it comes to curriculum and education is working as a solid partner and trying to do everything that we can to collaborate for the kind of change that we want to see in our communities. And for me, that means pushing more civics education, making sure that we have access to opportunities for higher education. So Peasley Tech is a really great resource in our community, and making sure that we have access to that and making sure that it's affordable for folks. So right now during COVID, people can go there without tuition if they've been let go because of COVID. And that's a really great opportunity as far as individual advancement and economic development in our community. So we can really address this from an economic development standpoint and a collaboration standpoint. And that's, I'm an educator. I always plan to have opinions on curriculum.
Shannon Reid? Yeah.
I think the only thing I would add to that is just highlighting Peaslee Tech again as a really important community partner. And I'm so grateful that exists here. And it's been a massive resource for so many clients that I've worked with over the years and families, and really is an opportunity to give people different paths to different types of careers. And I'm so impressed with how much they keep increasing the opportunities that they have there and the different types of programs with different curriculum that's really built for, truly, but there's so many technical skill building things, and as well as online education partners that they've expanded. And I'm really excited about that for our community. We've always had a reputation and a strong foundation of higher ed institutions in our county with the multiple universities that we have, including Haskell and Baker. But I'm really excited that Peaslee Tech is here for that kind of community college type opportunity and a really diverse variety of curriculum opportunities for people to find pathways.
Good, good. Thank you. At this point, I'm going to say thank you for Barry for hosting the event this evening and moderating. But I'm going to give the last word to our two future commissioners. So please feel free to give us your last piece of wisdom.
Well, thank you all so much. I appreciate you spending some of your Wednesday evening with us. I'm really excited about this opportunity. I'm very happy that voting is off the ground. There's been a lot of fun excitement around that on the first day of voting, which is fun. And so I'm ready for these last 3 weeks, or a little less than 3 weeks now, of getting out the vote. And just, I think what I'm most excited about this throughout the primary and since deciding to run, and all of the incredible community support and volunteer help that Shannon and I have had in our campaign, is how much community building there has been, and how much supportive resource sharing and empowering of each other, and people who have been disenfranchised voters before, never voted before. Those stories mean everything to me, especially after having only won by 3 votes. So like every story that somebody tells me about voting for me is a treasure. So I'm really grateful for that, and excited for the opportunity to help represent the community that raised me, and that I'm from, and I'm proud to be from, and I have always worked to serve in some way. And this is a new way that I hadn't imagined before this year, in all honesty, but I'm really excited about it, and happy to be representing you in a few months, I hope.
Thank you, Shannon.
I just want to echo a lot of what Shannon said. Thank you very much, Barry, for moderating today. And thank you, Pat and Noreen, for pulling us all together. This was a really wonderful conversation, and I appreciate it. We have 20 days left until one of the most momentous elections. I think we say that every time, but this time we can really, really mean it, up and down the ballot. So I think a big piece for me is just making sure that we encourage everyone to vote all the way down the ballot to the very bottom, where Shannon and I are, and all the way up the ballot, so we can see some big change in those races. We have the opportunity to elect the first Democratic senator from the state of Kansas in a really long time. We have the opportunity to flip the 3rd district for the first time in a really long time. I think we have a lot of opportunities in this election, and we've seen a lot of community building and a lot of excitement around this election. For the past week, I've been asking everyone to reach out to 5 friends to make sure that they're registered, but that deadline happened yesterday. So now I just want to make sure that everyone's reaching out to 5 friends and making sure they have a plan to vote in the next 20 days. And I know everyone on this call probably has already reached out to at least 5, and it can be 10, 20, 25. We need to make sure that we're getting all of the votes out that we possibly can in our community, and continuing to engage folks who are getting engaged for the first time, and seeing that local politics, local policy making really matters in their lives. And this is where they can make a huge difference. So again, I'm excited to keep all of those new voters, newly energized voters engaged in committee work and commission work, and just bugging them for their opinions so that we know that we're continuing to move in the right direction as we join the commission and get to collaborate with elected leaders across our community. So thank you again for being with us this evening. I appreciate it.
Thank you all and good evening. Bye-bye.